he says, and associated actions. We encourage it to do so, and he calls on all Americans who are currently in Iran to leave immediately. Now, in the past hour, let's take you on to another major development which has been happening because in the head-to-head between the U.S. Department of Defense and one of America's leading artificial intelligence companies, Anthropic.
The U.S. president has just directed the federal government to stop using the AI company's technology, which has been resisting a Pentagon demand that it lift all restrictions on how that technology is used.
Posting on Truth Social, Mr. Trump called the Anthropic company a radical left woke company, which he said will not dictate how the United States fights and wins wars, and accused it of jeopardizing national security. He added that U.S. agencies would phase out use of its tech over a period of 6 months.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had given Anthropic until today, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, to give the U.S. military unfettered access to its AI technology or risk losing its government contract.
But Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei did not back down. He said his company would rather not work with the Pentagon than agree to uses of its tech that may undermine rather than defend democratic values.
Amodei had raised concerns about the use of AI for mass surveillance of U.S. citizens and weapons that fire without human involvement.
Anthropic makes the chatbot Claude and was the first AI company to get approval for use in classified military networks.
We can speak to technology researcher and author Stephanie Hare, who co-presents the BBC's AI Decoded program. It's great to see you. First of all, what's your reaction to what President Trump has put out as a statement?
On the one hand, I'm not surprised that this is about essentially canceling a military contract, right? So they're canceling a contract with Anthropic because the vendor, Anthropic in this case, disagrees with the buyer, the U.S. government, in how its technology can be used. That's not what's dramatic. What's dramatic is that everybody agrees that Anthropic's Claude is the best model, and it's the only one that's embedded in U.S. classified systems. So to pull that superior model out, it could actually arguably put U.S. national security at risk.
What is behind President Trump's accusation that Anthropic is radical left woke AI?
I would love for him to be pressed further on that because it's a pretty consensus view among everybody who works in AI that AI is a risk that needs to be managed. That's why we've had all of the AI safety summits, first here in the United Kingdom at Bletchley Park, then in Paris, and most recently in India. So everybody acknowledges that this is an incredibly powerful technology, that the regulations we have are not adequate. Therefore, it's not really a woke position. It's a pretty normative position. And we also have to understand that the other companies that provide AI to the US government, one of them being Elon Musk's xAI, for instance, they make a tool called Grok that has been used to create deepfake, non-consensual pornography and illegal child sexual abuse material. And now that's going to be used in the US government. So I'm not really sure what the president's point is when he's talking about vendors and their values and their politics. We want to look at what's the best tool to keep the United States safe and to prevent risk.
What is at stake here, which you've alluded to, is how AI is used in warfare. And one of the complaints that Dario Amodei had is he doesn't want his technology to be used, Anthropic's technology, to be used for fully autonomous drones, for example. Is there a consensus across the industry on that?
Well, his point is actually, it's not like a personal point of view that he has. He's saying that the technology that he builds and indeed wants to sell, he's been working with the U.S. Department of Defense already for over a year. He says it's not reliable enough. So the idea of removing a human from a decision to use a weapon to kill other humans is already a terribly ethically fraught question. So if you're being told the technology that we're building isn't reliable enough, you can't do it safely to remove a human, that seems to me like a pretty cautious stance that he's taking. He's also saying that it could be used to conduct mass domestic surveillance on U.S. citizens, and that existing legislation and regulation is not good enough to protect us anymore. The technology has advanced. So what we really need is for President Trump to announce new AI safety regulation.
Okay, Stephanie, really good to speak to you. Thank you for that perspective.
Thank you.
And let's get back to our panel, Angie Wong and Brett Bruin. Brett, what did you make of Stephanie's suggestion that this could ultimately pose a risk to US national security?
I think it does, having served on the U.S. National Security Council. And it's really alarming that both Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, and now the president want to so recklessly take off such basic safeguards. One, you shouldn't have the U.S. military spying on Americans. That's a principle that is enshrined in our Constitution. It's a principle that I think most Americans would agree to. And second, that robots or, artificial intelligence shouldn't be able to make decisions about who to kill. So the notion that they are upset with Anthropic simply because those two fundamental rights and indeed legal protections should be discarded, I think speaks to the level of recklessness, the level indeed of lawlessness that is pervading the administration at this time. And let's also just take account of some news that happened this week. You had the Department of Defense fire a laser at a Department of Homeland Security drone. I mean, we are ending up in a period of Star Wars, and the notion that you're going to take the human out of that, and we could find ourselves with, lasers and all sorts of other weapons firing around us without any humans involved is a really, really scary scenario.
Angie, that Donald Rumsfeld quote about unknown unknowns and unknown unknowns seems to fit many, many occasions, and perhaps in this one as well. I mean, are you concerned that because Anthropic wants to ensure there are the proper guardrails in place, and this is not what the government seems to want at the moment, or at least it's not working, they're not on the same track in terms of their timescales. Are you concerned about this? Are you scared by the potential for this to go wrong?
Well, it is no doubt that we are at a very dangerous intersection between AI and warfare. And where that looks like for the United States, what I can tell you is the U.S. is behind its partners with Israel and our adversaries with China and Russia. They have AI models that do this already. But it's not left to the private sector to dictate what our war strategies will be and what our policies are. That's left for Congress and the president to decide. So for a company CEO to make these decisions on how the Department of War is going to operate, well, no wonder why Pete Hegseth and President Trump decided to walk away from this $200 million contract. Ultimately, yes, I agree with both sides. I mean, I think there are some real dangers with AI taking over lawfare. We have seen a lot of kind of false positives already, and this is at a very, very small scale. So there should be some guardrails, but that's going to have to be made by Congress and our president.
Brett, what do you think of that argument, which we've also heard from the Trump administration? It's not up to a private company to be able to decide what the guardrails are and how they should be used.
Yeah, I understand that notion that you don't want private companies telling the U.S. military how to fight. But in this case, they're not saying to the U.S. military, you can't use these technologies for certain purposes. They're simply saying we need to be assured that there are not going to be lawless activities in which our technology is engaged. And the fact that the Trump administration would not commit to that, and the track record that we have seen over the last year when it comes to Homeland Security, abuses of some of the technologies, abuses of some of the roles and the rules of how the government's supposed to operate vis-a-vis its citizens, is why you have Anthropic saying, whoa, 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 stop for a second and let's ensure that this very powerful technology is not abused.
Brett and Angie, we have to take a short break. We're back with you both in a moment. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.